Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I'm coming at you with another Wargaming in Miniature paint clinic. Basically, I am going to be painting a Glaug officer pod for Robotech RPG Tactics. Now, initially I've primed it white, as you can see here, and then with the first color that I'm going over it with, it's going to be a basalt gray, which is kind of a bluish gray. And we're going to paint the legs and part of the arm cannons with the basalt. Take a look. It's kind of a deeper, darker gray. It's not as dark as German gray, because German gray is a great highlight on black, and it's extremely dark. But I did want a dark gray, so I went with basalt. I compared like 15 different grays that I have. I've got an unusual number of grays, but I tried to go ahead and find the one that matches the book the best. So here we go. Let's go ahead and apply it. And now it's because I'm priming it or applying it to white. If you water it down slightly, what you'll do is you'll get a little bit of highlight will shine through. So what I tend to do is I mix my paint about a 1-to-1 usually with my Vallejos. But this one might be just a little bit more. You have to experiment with your own paint consistencies. Because this is a larger model, it did take me a little bit longer to paint. I actually have to use a fairly large brush to cover these areas. And don't worry about using a large brush and messing up and covering another part of the model, because you're going to be painting over. This is the first color, so first colors are always the fastest. You take the largest. This is what I think I usually like to do, is take the color that covers the largest portion of the model and paint that on first. And I paint it with a larger brush than normal, maybe a standard or a full-size brush, so that I can cover the model as fast as possible. Now I don't paint this fast. This is a sped up video. 4 times the speed actually. And you just cover it up completely. Don't worry about making mistakes, because again, you will be going back over and correcting any mistakes with the second color. So I'm painting the charged particle cannons and the legs, the hip joint, trying to avoid the round circle on the legs and the gas vents on the back of the cannons, because I am going to go back over that with a light blue, and I did not want to have to repaint it white first, because your lighter colors definitely want to go on top of white better. And I'm just touching up right now. Any spot that I see that I might have messed up, just go back over it. And it allows me to review the model to make sure that I've actually covered everything that needed to be covered. Because sometimes you'll put a model down and you go on to the next color, and then you'll realize, oh man, I didn't get under the cannon. So you just make sure you got to review the entire model while you're painting. Go at it from different angles, you know. Now what I tend to do is just rest my hands on the table to steady my hands. As you might have known if you watched any of my other painting videos, I always say that I put both hands on the table to give them a consistent steadiness. When you get underneath the torso, you do need to pay a little particular attention not to go over the edges, so that when you do go back over it with the light blue, you're not going to you'll have those sharp lines, and that's what you want. You want those sharp lines. But again, remember, at the end of the video, I will show you a technique to enhance your sharp lines. It's called black lining, and that'll be done at the end. All right, so now what we're doing, that was basalt gray right there. That's the bottle. So you know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you each color after I use it. It's probably backwards. I probably should have showed you the bottle as I started to use it, but I wasn't thinking when I did it. Okay, so now we're going to go on to a very light blue. I think it's called ice blue, and it looks almost white, but once you get the paint on there, you will see that it does make a difference once you're looking at the model completely painted. You got to review, make sure your model is dry before you go on to the next color. And luckily Vallejo paints, they dry pretty quick, you know, so by the time you're done, there it is, ice blue. By the time you're done painting a color, if you're painting in a chain, like multiple, if you're painting an army and you need multiples of the same model, if you paint like 3 models, by the time you get to the 3rd model, the first model should be dry enough to continue painting. So you can just continue on cycling through your colors by painting more than one model at one time. And you need to do that with the Robotech models because you have, just like in any other miniature game, like Napoleonics or Warhammer or Ancients, Field of Glory, whatever, you're going to have multiple mechs. You're going to have multiple mecha or soldiers, and they're all going to look almost exactly the same. Like if you're painting a French army, you're going to need to have like blue for all their jackets. So paint the whole unit, paint all the jackets blue, and then move on to the next color. All right, so here we go. Let's go ahead and get to the ice blue. See, it almost looks white. Almost. It's blue though. It's very light. It's like lighter than sky blue. I almost went with a light gray, but I wanted that blue tint. Now I could have mixed my own paint, but not if Vallejo already has a paint that's as close. And you can use any brand. You don't have to use Vallejo. I mean, that's just my personal preference when it comes to painting, because of the what do they call it? The pigment count inside the paint is high enough that even if you thin it out, you actually will still get the right color. It's amazing. Like I'll take an Americana bottled paint. I'll put some water, and then it is so thin that it will not cover any other color. So there's like folk art's not too bad. Americana is actually not too bad. And then Vallejo, there's P3, that's an awesome paint. Citadel paint is awesome. There's a lot of paints out there that you might feel are have the pigment count that you're looking for. But Vallejo is where I like my go-to paint is Vallejo. I'll paint Vallejo first unless I don't have a color. I can always mix, but if I just don't have something, then I'll reach out to some of my other paint bottles that I've had. Citadel, one good thing I would have to say about Citadel is that their paint seems to last a long time. They don't dry up. But I always reconstitute my paints if I let them sit for over a few months. What I'll do is I'll put a few drops of water inside the paint bottle or what have you. Okay, it looks like the electric, or not the electric blue, but the ice blue is almost finished. Yeah, so now, like, if any of that basalt gray, and you notice as it's drying, it's starting to get darker and darker, that's pretty cool. Now, I did paint this on 2 models at one time. And this is part of the second model. I thought I edited all this out, but if I didn't, that's okay. The first one model has a textured base and the other model doesn't. I actually textured like 3 of my Zentradi models before I realized that I wasn't going to texture any of them with any gravel. But I left those 3. They're unique. They're different. And so you can just see how fast it is to... and by me painting 2 models, by the time I get done with a color on the second model, the color should be dry on the first model, allowing me to cycle through it. It actually doesn't take you much longer to do 3 models than it does to do 1, because instead of sitting there waiting for your paint to dry, you can actually progress onto a second or third model while your primary model that you're doing is drying. And then you can go back in and resume as soon as your third model's done. So you're actually getting 3 done in about the same time that you would get 1 finished. So it's just a faster method. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and I'm just doing some touch-ups on the first model that I noticed that as it was drying, some white was shining through in places that I didn't like it to be shining through. So I basically just went back over it with the second coat. Not a lot, just a couple of different areas. And see, and look how it does show blue. Now I'm pulling out what's called intermediate blue, which is really a gray color, but it's a lighter gray. And I'm going to paint the nozzle with that, and maybe some vents underneath the cannons right there, and just a couple of things on the back, like the it's just to give it a different color, just a different texture. Not a whole lot is actually that intermediate blue. Yeah, the little exhaust ports in the back of the thing, and that's pretty much it with the intermediate blue. Which intermediate blue is really just a light gray. That's really all it is. Looks pretty good. Just reviewing the model, making sure I didn't forget anything. Looking it all over. Just give those guys little vents just a little bit of highlight. And you can use the same intermediate blue. That's what I'm using, because it's a little bit lighter than the basalt, as you can see. And it'll make those little areas pop out. Not a whole lot. I probably should have went with a little bit lighter. And there it is, intermediate blue. Alright, what are we doing next? I think I'm going to do the feet. Now we're using a Carmine Red. Now I experimented. I have a Carmine Red, and I thought I would go ahead and use it because one of my followers on my YouTube channel said that crimson is actually darker than red. And this is the only other Vallejo red that I have, actually. So I pulled it out and I looked at it. And I actually visited my local game store and looked at the Vallejos that they have. And the flat red that they have there is really dark. It is dark. So I said, you know, I'm going to try my Carmine Red. It's a glossy red. It's kind of a thinned out red, so too much of the white was actually shining through. And this is a special note that I'll give you. I did paint the entire model with Carmine Red, but after this video is filmed, I did go back over those red portions with my Crimson Red, and I touched them up and got rid of the highlighted areas that I didn't like. Because Carmine Red, as you can see, it's drawing very glossy. I didn't realize it was a gloss paint, and I prefer my Wargaming models not to have gloss. So I do go back over my models and spray them with a flat coat. But Carmine Red's got kind of a cool look to it. Don't get me wrong, I like that color, but it's not light red. It's kind of just a straight up red. It's not flat, it's not dark, it's not light, it's just red. And that's why I thought it would be a good paint, but I just didn't like the gloss, and I like the crimson because when I put crimson on top of something like that basalt gray, it will actually still stand out because it's a light color, like almost a white red. Like, it's not a pink, but it's and you would think crimson would be like dark, but it's not. I just don't like that gloss look that it gives it. Now this model is almost finished. What we're going to do is we're going to do a base, and what I'm doing the base in is like a German gray, watered down, so it will, what do you call it, the white underneath will kind of shine through a little bit, and it will actually give you the look of like an asphalt. I don't know if that's necessarily a good technique, but I've used it a couple of times and it really does pretty much stand out. I probably could go with like an asphalt color and just paint it straight on and not worry about any of this white shining through and all that jazz. But what the heck, since I already have it out, why not use it, right? Okay, and that's almost finished. Now, the only thing we have to do now, I think, is black lining. Oh, that's not true. I need to paint the dark gray, like a German gray, on top of a couple, like the antennas and the cannons in the front. And this one, because these parts are a little bit smaller, I went ahead and went with a smaller brush. That way, you know, you don't mess up. Double checking it. Inside of the cannons are still white. There we go. Touch that up. And that should be pretty much it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do some black lining to make the transitions between colors stand out even more. Okay, now I'm just dropping in some of that dark gray inside the cannon holes. What a lot of people do is put black inside there. I think black's unnecessary. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But because those holes are already in shadow, that dark gray with shadow will just make it even darker. And the vents, of course, have to have a darker gray. Okay, we're going to let that dry and then we'll go do some black lining. All right, so now I black line with an ink pen, a Pentel ink pen with a very fine tip. Okay, that's off camera. Bring that on camera there. There we go. And I'm just showing you kind of like how it looks so far before the black lining. I mean, you can play with that right there. That's a perfect model. I mean, that's fine. As a game store owner, I would have accepted that on the playing table. I had this rule when I was a game store owner that every model on the table had to be painted. You could not play a miniature game in the store with unpainted figures. And that was a rule I had from day one. Because first of all, the main reason why I let people play miniature games in the store is to kind of show off and build excitement for these games. And if you do it with unpainted figures, it's just boring and stale. And so some people were trying to just put one coat of paint on it, like prime it black or something. And so I had to come up with a sub rule saying you had to have at least 4 colors on the model. I mean, that was, come on, guys. And here's the pen. This is a pen you get at any office supply or even Walmart, you know. And what I do is once it's dry, I just go over it, all the different cracks and crevices to bring out the model. And you use wherever you normally would put like a black wash. You don't do the black wash because it'll actually make your model dirty, and because these are Zentradi, their models or their Armada is all clean, you know, they're from space, so they don't have a whole lot of dirt on them. So let me just take lines and touch them up between where the colors transition, like from the red to the blue. On the model, it actually has a groove, or like when you glue a piece on where it makes a connection. You just take that black pen, draw a line, and you get the black line effect that you normally would get with either a paintbrush that you might paint on, maybe a wash or a lightened black into an area. But instead of that, you can just use a pen. You can do this while, you know, just watching some YouTube videos or whatever. Okay, I had to zoom it in because I wanted you to kind of see how easy it is to do. as opposed to using a brush. Now, if you like did a black wash on this model, the light blue would all turn like super dirty, dark looking, and then the red wouldn't be red anymore. It would be kind of a crimson, not a crimson, it would be kind of like a, I don't know what color you would call it, like a gules. See how easy it is to get inside these little spots with the black pen? Edges where the arms connect, any intentional like seams in the armor and stuff like that, you can just draw it on. Now we're not going to do any decals today because that you can go back and watch my applying a decal to the Thunderhawk, or Tomahawk. There you go. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay. Get some black inside this lens here. Yeah. See how even on the light blue, by drawing these lines, what you're doing, look at that. By drawing these lines, you're actually making those individual areas, the transition between the colors, look like almost like an animated, like it was drawn specifically. And as a modeler, when you play your game, you're gonna, or I should say, as a war gamer, as you play your game, you're probably gonna be at 3 feet or at least arm's length away from the models. So you want the models to look good at arm's length. You don't want them to look good at 3 inches away from your eye. Well, not unless you're doing like a museum quality. But if you're just doing something to play a game with, paint it. Hold your arm fully extended out and look at the model and see if it looks good. And if it looks good at full extension, then you did a great job. Now some of these seams I don't want to enhance because they are like the torso, like the left and right half of the torso. When you glue it together, there might be a line there. Well, you don't want to draw a line down that because that's not technically supposed to be there. Unless you want to just, bring it out. The leg, the black on the dark gray looks really good. Just find the areas where the armor plates are or any additional plates. And if you mess it up, don't sweat it too much. You can wipe it off with some, like, what do I use? I have this thing, acetone. You have a brush and have a little acetone available so that you can just hit it and it will clear it off. The problem with using that is if your undercoat, like the gray or whatever, if it's not fully dry, then your acetone is going to strip it and then you're going to have an ugly looking model. So what I do is just be very careful with your pen and don't worry about it too much. And if I draw a line like where I shouldn't draw a line, what I'll do is I'll either leave it there or I'll go back and touch up with the original color to fix it. Or I'll just ignore it and not worry about it because it's just a gaming model. But I do want it to be, I do want my models to look good because I think I'm anal about that, or I don't know what it is. What's compulsive behavior or whatever, where my models, I want my models to look good on the table, and I won't accept anything less than good. They don't have to be great, but I do want them to look good. A lot of people will say the game is more important than the model because you're playing a game. Well, guess what? If you're going to just go play a game, then just get a board game like Monopoly and just go play the game. But if you're going to play a three-dimensional miniatures game, your model needs to be painted. It has to be painted good. What it does is there's something about having a three-dimensional tabletop with buildings and hills and trees, and then you've got your three-dimensional models on there, and you can kind of visualize exactly, whoops, see, doesn't look bad, just touch it up. You can visualize what the terrain looks like, and where the mechs are and how they take cover, and you know, or even in role-playing games. I prefer to use miniatures when it comes to role-playing, and I don't just have a gray pewter miniature on the table that everybody represents. No, you got to put some paint on it. You got to make it look good. Now the black on the basalt, you don't really see it that much, but once everything dries, it has that subtle transition, a subtle difference. And you can see that red underneath. Man, I really messed that up. So I had to go back underneath that. After I did the pen circle, I went back with some ice blue and corrected that. Sorry you can't see it, the base is in the way. Base is blocking what I'm doing. Now a lot of these panels, I'll only touch them if it's supposed to be in shadow, or the shadow would be pronounced. So like I would do like something underneath, but on others I want to show off each individual armor panel, so I'll do the entire thing, the top, back, side, left, right. Now, because I zoomed in so far to kind of show you what I was doing, you really can't see what I'm doing now. I'm sorry about that, because every time I glanced up at the camera, you know, it was like I had to maneuver my hand to get it in the right spot, and sometimes that was a little uncomfortable for me, the way I was holding the model, or, you know, because me painting it properly was more important to me than showing you how to do it, even though I know that's what the nature of this video is all about. But I'm also going to be using these models on a table at the local game store and playing with them, so I wanted them to look good. Now, I have made some game videos of me just playing solitaire and kind of showing you the mechanics of the game, so go check those out. Those videos are out right now. So we have like, I've only done the first 2 scenarios, but I plan to do all of them, and I also plan to do a video on how to build an army inside this game. I'm not going to use it as a tournament style game where I build an army, you build an army, and we put our stuff on the table and we blow each other up. That's not what I'm planning on using this game for. What I'm using this game for is, yes, games like that, but more of the scenario type games where both sides know what their forces are, and then there might be a referee, or it's kind of predetermined what the forces are. That's one way I'm going to use the game. And then another way is our role-playing game, our Robotech role-playing game. We're going to use these models as part of the action. We're going to use this combat system, which is almost exactly the Palladium combat system. It's just done with a D6. So I think they did a really good job of making it very similar combat system. Almost there. Plus I sped it up. And I'm sorry these videos take so long, but you know, a model does take a long while to paint sometimes from start to finish. So let's see, let's take a look at that. Doesn't that look pretty good? And here they are finished. Both of them are finished, and I zoomed in a little too close. Remember, arm's length is what you're looking at. Notice the light, basalt, the ice blue, the basalt, and this is how it might look on a table with like 6 Regults with him. He's the Glaug officer pod, and then he's got his Regults with him. Well, I appreciate you guys all coming out and checking out this video, and expect to see more from Robotech RPG Tactics from me, and you guys have a great day.